I'm right here with you.
Okay.
You've seen it done a million times already.
Huh?
You've seen it done a million times.
No.
You've seen it done. You've seen what you do it all the time. You do that.
Nice. Multitask.
Attorney Gelly.
Hey, how are you? Good.
Good.
Any questions for me? Good.
How you doing, brother?
How we doing, Mr. Graham? Good to see you.
Yeah, but it's still sitting, like I'm on page 18. So this is 3 pages ago, it's almost there.
How's it going?
How's it going? All right.
Oh, you could have it, definitely. I just wanted you to have it to you for next week. Yeah, yeah. You got it? What? Oh. I don't know if it's one or not.
No problem. I got you. I'm here for you.
Okay, so good evening. I would like to call the P&Z committee meeting on Tuesday, December 8th at 8:32 p.m. 6:30? 6:30 p.m. Okay, may I please have a moment of silent meditation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Madam Clerk, may I please have a roll call?
Vice Chair Urban,
Present.
Mayor Nicholson,
Here.
Chairman Coretta.
Here. Thank you. There's any addition or deletions to the agenda? Everything's okay, no? Perfect. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, motion approved by Councilperson, Vice Mayor Erbaum, and second by Mayor Nickerson. There are no minutes to be approved. We are waiting on those, right? Okay, I'm sorry. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Like I said, there are no minutes to be approved. We're waiting on those, right? And we go, so we're going right to the item, right? Zoning site plan review. The applicant Gonzalez Benito, residence at 101 Northeast 87th Street. We have Mr. Bruce?
Victor Bruce,
Victor Bruce from the architect office, right?
yes.
And he's gonna go and present the plans and welcome. And first of all, I have to congratulate you. That's a beautiful plan addition that you guys accomplished here. Very nice, not interfering with the facade of the house and adding a beautiful part to it.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Yeah, so we want to see his presentation, but we also want to hear from Placerbia, who's here also, who's going to advise us. And we have Attorney Geller with his name up, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you want to recognize Attorney Geller.
I'm sorry?
I don't know if you want to recognize Attorney Geller. He has his hand up.
Okay, yes, Mr. Geller,
Okay.
go ahead,
I
yeah.
guess we don't have a mic over here or anything? Okay. Well, I don't think we need to do that, but before we begin, we want to swear anybody who will be giving testimony in, okay?
Oh, okay,
So I can do that if you'd like, Mr. Chair.
sure.
So let me just ask, if anyone is going to give any testimony, please raise your right hand. Stand, raise your right hand, and just say aye and state your name.
I, Camila Sala,
I, Victor Bruce,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that any testimony I provide this evening
that any testimony I provide this evening
will be the truth,
will be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Either I swear to God or I affirm, either one.
I affirm.
Okay, thank you. And so your witnesses are sworn in, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And then the procedure, just very quickly, would be first, typically, we would first hear the staff report, and that will go into the record as evidence. And then immediately following that, the applicant gets to present. Again, if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to raise their hand and seek recognition from you. If they have a question of the staff, if they have a question of the applicant, they can question each other. The three of you have the right to ask a question of anybody that you want to at any time. And that's the whole procedure.
Okay, perfect, thank you, Mr. Geller. Okay, so we have our planning and zoning staffer, Camila, from Placerbia. She's gonna give us a quick presentation of what is being presented over here.
Yes, thank you, Councilperson Pirela. Good evening. Camila Sala, Planning and Zoning Consultant. This application is requesting a site plan approval for the construction of an addition. Considered a new construction because the area is greater than 50% of the existing building at 101 Northeast 87th Street. The property has a frontage facing Northeast 87th Street and a secondary frontage facing Northeast First Avenue. The project consists of a two-story addition to the existing single-family residence, consisting of a new kitchen and family room in the lower floor, and a new master bedroom, bathroom in the upper floor. The project also includes an addition to the accessory building in the rear, consisting of a new garden room and a garage addition in the northwest corner of the property. The recommendation for the application is approval with conditions pursuant to Section 1753, requirements and procedures for site plan review. The applicant shows good cause for compliance with the land use regulations and the development standards of this chapter and Chapter 24, except for parking standards, driveway regulations, which we will go in depth after the presentation by the applicant. Therefore, approval with conditions is recommended for this new construction with the following conditions: removal of the center driveway from the secondary front setback, and either approval for a variance is obtained or the proposed rear addition is moved an additional 5 feet to comply with the 15-foot setback. We will go into depth after the applicant's presentation regarding those conditions. In addition, application and supporting documentation, the construction of the proposed project should be in conformance with the submittal package dated 11/09/2020, and all representations proffered by the applicant as part of the review at the public hearings, in addition to all comments made by staff reviewers submitted to the applicant to be addressed prior to obtaining the building permit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Before we get to the presentation, her recommendation with conditions, I mean, we're going to let you go through the presentation, but her recommendation with conditions, to those conditions that she stated, do you feel as though any of those cannot be done?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, let me just, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, not Mr. Chair. There is one of the recommendations that is in the alternative, where the staff has provided a choice that the council has to make. The committee makes first and then the council. So I just want to clarify. I mean, certainly you can ask the question you asked, that's your privilege, but just point out to the applicant has a preference between those two, which I suspect they do. They can state that, but ultimately it's up to you to choose one of the two because they are presented in the alternative.
Yeah, so the reason why I was asking was because I don't want him, it's like, so for example, let's say if she made a condition that they felt physically, because of what they had in mind, they just couldn't do, I didn't want him to waste the time going through that part of the presentation if he felt like, you see what I'm saying, like that. So I'm just trying to.
Absolutely appropriate, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Attorney, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Could I ask her, could she go, I got a little distracted trying to get this back on. Could you list because we have a variance, and
Yes.
it's also the conditions that you talked about. Do you mind saying those again so I can kind of pick up what everybody else heard? And I apologize to everybody, but I got distracted.
No, absolutely. We can talk about the items of the application before the applicant has presented the application itself. We can go into,
You can present the staff report,
okay, yes,
including what conditions staff is recommending, but as I said, please point out both to the applicant and to the council, there's one place where the council has an alternative,
correct.
and while the applicant can express a preference, the council has to make that choice. And I think that's for tonight, the committee.
Correct.
Yeah, which is the building setback and the driveway.
Yes,
Right? Those are
one-
the two, one of the two, two conditions
The-
that you guys are
Yes, the
more
applicant has
concerned
also.
about, right?
Correct. The applicant has also applied for a variance because the addition to the rear, to the outbuilding encroaches on the 15-foot required setback for secondary frontages. And so the applicant has applied for a variance to be able to build the addition encroaching those 5 additional feet. Therefore, the condition is whether if the variance is granted by the committee or the applicant builds in compliance with the 15-foot secondary front setback. The other condition is the removal of one of the driveways along the secondary frontage as well, because it is it has an adverse impact toward pedestrians who are walking along the street, and all of the additional curb cut, not only does it not comply with the driveway requirements, but the additional curb cuts provide a safety hazard for any pedestrians walking along that street.
And your other conditions, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have others that are not, they're not difficult, but they're conditions.
Correct, yes. Those are the first two. The third is update the application package identifying all perimeter walls and their dimensions to be compliant with the zoning code conditions. Number 4, application and supporting documentation. Construction of the proposed project shall be in conformance with the applicant's submittal package dated 11/09/2020 and subsequent revisions. 5, all representations proffered by the applicant as part of the review of the application at public hearings. And 6, all comments made by staff reviewers and submitted to the applicant to be addressed prior to obtaining the building permit. Thank you.
And before you begin, as part of your presentation, Mr. Applicant, if I might, Mr. Chair, if you would address the mayor's point, there really are two conditions. One condition is removal of that third driveway. That's just a condition. That goes directly to the mayor's question. But the other condition, other than the standard ones, constructed in conformance with the code and with your application, etc. The other one, the council will have to decide, and if you can address whether you could move it and are willing to move it 5 feet to preserve the setback, or, as I suspect that you prefer the variance, but that's really the council's choice, not yours. But if you could address those two specifically in response to the mayor's question. Other than that, Mr. Chair, unless, and I should add also, members of the public, of course, can question staff, they can question the applicant, because this is although the formal public hearing actually occurs at the council, but this is in the nature of a public hearing. By opening it to the public as a public hearing, you may be able to, cut down on the time you have to spend at council. So you should treat this as a public hearing, and that means if a member of, if the applicant or a member of the public has a question of the staff report or of the applicant when they present, it's appropriate for you to ask if anyone has any questions now that she's completed the staff report.
Okay. So any questions from the council before I open it to the public?
No questions. I would just say, and once again, Mr. Attorney Geller, we appreciate it, man. All the expertise you're giving us to help move us forward quickly. I would just say that I think that we should open it up to the public after he does his presentation, because they might have questions that he might, between the two of them, they might answer those questions. So then people might come and ask questions that he's probably going to go over anyway, or she'll go over anyway. So I think before we actually go to the possible vote, after they do their presentations, then we should open it up to the public after they get all the information.
Okay. Sounds
Mayor,
good.
you're correct, but let me just say, it's also appropriate to open it to the public now that the staff report is done, and then open it again to the public after the applicant presents.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
So do I open it to the public? There's anyone in the public that wants to comment or have any questions?
Questions? They get comments later.
Right. No? Okay, so let's close it to public and back to the council. So we have, are you done with?
Presentation's still not going, no, sir.
But you have copies of what?
Yes.
All I have was the same thing. I was going to put it up on the screen at a point, but I can narrate and you can see what I'm talking about with the submittals that have been put in. If you all have it.
Okay, yeah, we'll have.
So may I?
Yeah, go ahead and start with it, yeah. So
So-
your presentation, please.
The two conditions, and I'll go right into the conditions, unless you'd like me to explain the project. I'd rather just go to the conditions and attack it.
Explain it, but since the staff just did very briefly,
Yeah.
it's fine, just so there's something in the record.
Okay, the conditions from our point of view.
Well, just very briefly what the project is.
Okay.
And like, 50 words. I mean,
All right.
you have to-
Yeah, no.
They have the written documentation in front of them. It is your application. So just so you say something for the record, and then you can address the conditions to answer the mayor's question.
Okay, very good. So if you can turn to page A1, I'll describe what the project is through that site plan. And it's the architectural sheet A1. The existing house is a 2-story house. The second floor is an attic space. It's a beautiful home. It's a historical looking home. It has historical significance. It's also connected to a garage through a covered walkways. It almost looks like an accessory structure that's separated, but it is attached through that walkway. So the 2-story with the attached garage, we're adding another 2 stories And through the process of the design and with working with the client, we made every intention of not taking away from the existing home as much as possible. So our connection was not expanding it to the east. Our connection is pushed to the back of the front elevation, trying to maintain as much as possible the overall volume. So that, our intent in this project was to try to protect the existing as much as possible. So it's a 2-story addition to the northeast. It has a bedroom on the second floor for the owner and his wife. And then the first floor is an expanded kitchen with living space. The house needed a little bit more space, and rather than expanding its size, we decided to do the addition towards the, like I said, to the northeast. They also needed a little bit more space for parking, so we took the existing garage and we added 2 more bays to it to the north. And a pool. So then as far as the conditions, we would gladly, or we would prefer to have the 3 driveways. The client would really love the 3 driveways, but we understand that if it's too much and we'd rather not ask for that. We'd rather talk about the setback. So if the driveway needs to be removed and instead of having 3 driveways, we have 2, then that's something that's acceptable. Now, the setback issue is not so much where we're choosing to encroach on the setback, but we're actually continuing the existing location of the house. Because when this house was built, it was built 10 feet from the property line, not the current setback of 15. So the whole side on the west side of this house is 10 feet from the property line. So what we did was we expanded, or we basically extended that by adding to the north of the garage at the same line. So it looks in harmony with what's already there. And it is a non-compliant, but the house is already non-compliant on the west side. So it's already 5 feet closer than the 15 that's supposed to be. But if we had done it differently, it would have looked awkward. And it just made a natural move to add those 2 spaces, or those 2 bays to the north of the existing garage, lined up. I didn't necessarily follow it. If I could show you the drawings, I would show you.
Yeah,
I did a little bit of a step back and then copied the gable end of the existing on the other side. So there's some architectural play, but I kept it at that setback because it just made sense. So we're requesting, respectfully, we're requesting for that variance.
Okay, thank you. There's any question? Any questions over here, the council?
Good evening, how you doing?
Yeah.
So as you realized in your planning that setback was essentially, we're talking about a grandfathered property, right? 1931, I think I saw was the original build. Did you spitball or discuss Plan B, C, or D in the event that a variance would not be given for that setback? Well, so for example, I understand that, that the way the property is currently situated, it makes sense aesthetically to continue the line. I'm just curious to know if there were ever a Plan B or C or D on the table as to, okay, if we're not able to continue that line because of the code on the setback, was there any discussion taking place of what your options might be to accomplish the same goal of
I explored it in design, I explored it with the client, but I would have shown you this if I had it up on the screen. When you see it, it makes a lot more sense to have followed that line. So this is the existing, and then we did a couple more alongside of that. To have done something different, I think would have taken away from the quality of the house, from the look on the side, on the west side, and it would have taken away from the character of the house. To do anything else would have been, these houses, when it comes to these styles, they're simple styles. Anything that would have looked awkward would have thrown off the original completely if I had done something different over here. So the intent of following it, it seemed more harmonious than anything else.
Okay. I actually have a question for Camila. The plans as presented, do we know what percentage of the lot we're talking about in terms of coverage by structure?
I want to look it up it's in the report,
Okay,
but
I'll look for it here. I can look for that while.
it's at 30.6%.
It's currently in these plans.
With the additions.
Okay. The plans as presented, it's 30 point something.
Yes, almost
Okay.
31, and the requirement is 40.
Okay, so the limit is 40, and we're at 30 something.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because, so, I agree, the design is lovely. It certainly seems like a really wonderful plan for that property. This facade that we're looking at right now, I am glad to hear that the elimination of a driveway is not going to be a huge issue, because I do feel that, it's not I don't want to say monolithic, because it's not, because there's plenty of lines, and, there's things that break up the view of it, right? It's not just a wall of a building. But it does have a feeling of, I'm trying to think of the phrase here, compound almost. So for someone on the street walking by, with continuing that line at the 10-foot setback down, the length of the property, it has a feeling of gated community. It has a feeling of exclusion, as opposed to the more open aspects of almost every other property in the village. So my concern is really quite simply that people who know me know that convenience, right? The word convenience comes to mind. So it seems convenient to just extend the line, because I agree, it makes aesthetically, just extending that line with the rest of the house makes sense. I'm concerned I'm gonna run into a moral dilemma where yes, it's a 1931, so it's a 1931 property, right? So it's one of the older properties in the village. Just as you said, it's got the property as it sits today is essentially, one of our oldest examples in the neighborhood. And so my concern is that do we know what percentage of the lot is at right now with the current structure?
Oh, no, that was with without the
Right.
addition.
And if I may,
Yes,
can you see the arrow?
yes,
So this is the existing two-story volume.
right,
The existing house ends here.
okay,
So that's about 60 feet. We're adding almost like 30% of that. So we're not really adding so much. This right here, it does make it seem like you're feeling it. This doesn't have to happen, because this is really where the building ends. This is where a setback is.
okay.
So what we're adding is really these two doors.
All right, and then let me ask,
Is existing.
and so then in that discussion, both of safety and then the code itself, in terms of what percentage of a front can be driveway. So in that, it seems clear that we're saying that you're going to need to lose one of the driveways, and you're saying that, it's not, that's agreeable. What is your plan? Is it just to simply reduce it down to 2 garages, or try and incorporate those into, say, a 2-car garage with a narrow driveway at the curb and then expands to the 2 garages? What would your plan be?
Before I answer that, I'd like to clarify, because this is a little bit of a rendering freedom, artistic freedom by the renderer.
Sure.
Just so we're somewhat clear of what the intent would be for this approval. It's more like this. One driveway here and another driveway with the grass in the center. So this is where one door would be and the other door would be here. Going back to the rendering, you'll see how it makes a difference. This will be grass. The sidewalk continues here in front of the house, and this would also be grass. There's some,
Sure, I'm with
there's a
you.
lot of artistic freedom.
Sure.
And this doesn't necessarily have to be solid, that creates that walled-in effect. It should be a little bit more open. So we keep 2 operable garage doors, and this would be more of a window, maybe something different, because there's no longer a drive going up to it.
Okay, and then in the initial presentation, it was discussed that the owners of the property seem to have a need for extra parking, right? So are they going to be, so it sounds like they need the 3-car garage. What would their plan be for dealing with only 2 garages if they set out with this with the intent that they needed 3?
Well, you know how sometimes people don't necessarily park inside the garage? It would have been more if they were going to be parking outside. Sincerely, I mean, they have 4 spaces now. They'll have 2 spaces to park inside and 2 spaces to park outside.
Okay.
So it's still a good amount of parking, and unfortunately, we have to do on-site parking. There's not much more alternatives, because if I go back to this, we have nowhere else to park. I'll show you why. So the light green is the property, the dark green is the swale.
Okay.
Would be El Portal. This is all septic, so there's really no other place to park. So that's why this was always the garage. This is always and it's where the existing garage is located.
And so if we're saying that they need to reduce that down to the 2 garages, are the owners amenable to that?
I believe so.
Okay.
And that's why I think the driveway is something that it's not as important as keeping this line of addition on the north side.
Right. Yeah, and then I think the larger issue certainly is the setback. And the reason for that, I think, is that if you look at a map of El Portal, you see a kind of hodgepodge of lot sizes, for example, and lot shapes even, right? And so going forward, because a lot of our lots are actually quite small, there's going to be a desire for people to increase the coverage of a structure on a lot, right? People will be more interested in having volume within the house as opposed to necessarily maintaining a large backyard, right? But that proportion is a significant part of what I think is unique about El Portal. Because we have small lot sizes, yet we still have the aesthetic of larger yards. And yes, that's because the homes are older and essentially smaller, right? I think you found a good plan here of how to, I think the square footage of habitable goes up to 2,900 on this plan, which is huge for El Portal. It really is absolutely massive in terms of comparing it to other properties in the village. So my concern is that if we grant a variance because it looks nice on this property, we're going to have an incredibly difficult time telling anybody else no. So for example, right now, we're trying to update the code so that we don't have to issue variances any longer on garage conversions, right? We're trying to make the code such that that anyone doing a garage conversion has to do it in a way that it doesn't look like a garage conversion. And the idea is that it's supposed to look like that was the original construction of the house, right? And so this is something different, because those setbacks are important because they help us maintain the aesthetic overall of the village. This one is a tricky one because the house already exists within, you know, a grandfathered scenario. So this is a tough one, to be sure. I can't tell you where I sit as far as a decision on that yet, but I, you know, as always, our planners do an incredibly diligent job, and so, you know, overall, I agree that really the only two issues we're dealing with here are driveway and that setback. So I certainly do hope that the owners are amenable to reducing it to 2 garages. I think it will make the property as a whole seem a lot more inviting. And then as far as the setback goes, that's going to be a tough discussion for the 3 of us to have, I'm sure. So I just wanted to know if there were any alternatives that you already had in the event that we shot you down and said, we can't, you know, issue a variance for that setback. And because I don't think we can, I don't think we can say one way or the other tonight whether or not we're going to be able to accommodate that.
First, let me say something, if I may, please. Because it is a little contradictory here that you have it drawn as, you know, in the picture it looks like a garage, but in reality it's a cabana room, right? It's not actually a garage. It has that portion of the house in the middle has a bathroom, a full bathroom, and it's a room.
Yeah.
So it's not actually a garage. It was never designed inside as a garage. So why was the driveway and the garage door there? Was any?
It would have been, basically providing him with the flexibility.
Yeah.
So, yes, we needed the bathroom for the pool,
Right.
but right now, taking the driveway out, it's somewhat fluid, so we're definitely willing to update whatever we have to do in the plan to be able to achieve the approval. You know, if it's 2 driveways and then 2 garages behind it, that kind of adjustment could be made without any issues.
Okay. And if I don't know if Mr. Greller or the survey can answer this, but isn't it, I don't know, you know, I hear a lot about grandfathering and all of that, but isn't it after you know, if a construction is over 50%, don't you lose the grandfathering and you have to actually conform with the new code?
Yes, I would like to state for the record that our recommendation for the variance is basically denial. We recommend.
Because it's over 50% of the construction, right?
Because with every
Yeah.
new improvement, we require it to comply, to come closer to the code.
Right.
And also to answer your question, Vice Mayor, the lot coverage to the existing footprint is 15% versus 31 with the addition.
Okay.
Thank you.
Say the last again, 15-foot versus?
Well, my question had been the existing structure today, as we look at it. What percentage of coverage on that lot? Yeah, so she's saying it's 15% currently, and then with the additions, that will grow to 30% coverage, but that's still 10%, that's 40% is our max, so that's still within those.
Still within the,
Right.
right.
Right. And then, you know, I do think that the elimination of one of those driveways, at least from the artist rendering, would go a very long way towards making the property more inviting. And then the considerations are real in terms of the safety of the pedestrians on the sidewalk, as well as the code requiring, putting a limit on how much of a frontage can be used for a driveway. And so I think it's all gonna come down to the discussion on the setback, I believe. And again, that's why I go back to wondering what, if any, discussions were, you know, could I ask at what point in the design phase that you became aware of a possible issue with the setback on that one front?
I always knew that the house was encroaching by 5 feet.
Okay.
Because it's the first thing any architect does, he does his zoning research, he applies setbacks to the property, and I already knew that the house was non-compliant on the west side and that it extended so much on that side. But I'm also aware, and that's why I'm showing the site plan, so you can see in color the property itself in a lighter green, and the swales, parkways to the south and the west, there's a lot of green there. So even though we know through a plan and a survey where the property lines are set, what visually we see the house and the street and everything else in between is grass. So the distance itself, it's still greater than most of other properties in El Portal. El Portal has few streets that have this much parkway on one side. And this one doesn't even have a sidewalk. So the grass goes from asphalt to the house. So that perception of having this extension kind of encroached, it's not perceived. And that's why I felt comfortable. Also, it's so much of the house on the west side that it's already set on that 10-foot, that, and you can see it here again, it's from here to here. Adding this little bit, I really felt like this is fine because it really falls in line with the existing house and doesn't make it be like a hiccup or a bleep. Like if I did anything different, I think it would have just made it so awkward back there that it felt correct to continue that line. So doing this, where we step back the front, made a lot of sense. Yeah, setback in the front is much, there's no problem with the setback there. But the moves made, all in conjunction, made a lot of sense. If I push that upper part closer to the east, it affects the whole backyard. And
Right.
the percentage of how much I'm encroaching, it's not even half. So at 5 feet, still keeping 10, still keeping with the house, made sense to me.
Chairman Pearl,
Sure.
did you get your question answered as well? I'm just asking if you got your question of the applicant answered.
No, about the percentage of like being a new construction, being over 50%, and you don't have to, you have to comply with the new code. So it's not necessarily grandfather in, and it's that's what we consider in here.
Right, like for example, anyone wishing to redo a driveway right now, for example, right? They might have a driveway that's grandfathered and out of code currently, but as soon as they decide to overhaul that driveway, it's got to be brought up to code. So to Councilperson Perella's point, you're putting us in a little bit of a difficult situation, because if we were to approve this variance, then we're very, again, because of the age of the neighborhood, because of the age of the homes, and because of, let me ask you this, the owners, are they planning on, they're living in this, or are they planning on selling this property?
They're living it.
Okay.
The owners are here as well.
Okay. And so a concern is that if we set a precedent, the precedents we set carry a lot of consequences, because what's happening right now is you have developers looking for properties almost exactly like what we have in El Portal, to essentially come in, and the square footage is an issue. COVID's changing everything, but it was already headed that way. I'm sure you're aware that one of the discussions that's taking place is which major city is it going to be that outlaws single-family residences soon? This is a discussion that takes place, around the country in urban centers because of the need for that square footage. So density is becoming a huge factor, and to understand that what's happening in Miami right now, I don't need to tell you, but with the gentrification is taking place because some of the poorest people in Miami live in some of the highest land. And so El Portal is traditionally a poor neighborhood, but we also have our low-lying areas, but we also have a lot of areas in El Portal that are a higher elevation than the surrounding area. Not to mention the fact that we are further aided by the railroad, because in the event of some insane catastrophic storm surge washing up 87th Street from the bay, that railroad track gives us an extra 2-3 feet of coverage, right? Which could end up making a difference in some catastrophic event in the next 20 years. So, with that, we are a target now, because we have developers coming in looking to overhaul the square footage of a property, overhaul the lot coverage, because of these trends and because of these needs. The long-term need, the best outcome for this village in the long term is really to maintain what has been going on here for quite a number of decades, and a great deal of that has to do with the aesthetic of the neighborhood. And so, because of our lots, we don't have the ability ever to become like Miami Shores, who has huge lots with huge homes on those huge lots. We don't have that type of square footage. So we are between a rock and a hard place on this setback issue because of what it could mean for the near future of having people coming in to make the argument, well, you accepted this variance for this property, it was built in 1931, we're redoing this property, it was built in 1932 and has a similar issue. Only that person maybe isn't looking to beautify a place for long-term residency, maybe they're looking just to flip it. And so we need to take the issue of that setback incredibly seriously. I believe, clearly. And so I might be a little frustrated that there wasn't a plan B or C, that there might have been an assumption that, well, they'll have to approve the variance because it makes sense aesthetically, because it's convenient, because, X, Y, and Z. So I'm certainly sympathetic to that need. For example, if you lose 5 feet of setback in your design, you might end up, losing 2 garages instead of just 1, right? Because there may not be enough room to accommodate a vehicle if you lose another 5 feet. So yes, we are stuck. It is a rock and a hard place, and this is something that the 3 of us will have to figure out, and we'll do that. But I'm a little bit concerned that there's not ready at hand a plan B for the event that we would not grant that variance.
If I may, most of my projects are in these 3 villages. I do a lot of work in Miami Shores, I do a lot of work in Biscayne Park and El Portal. I have various projects here. I would go for a variance 100% of the time, ever, never. I don't go for variances because I know the hardship has to be a real hardship. Miami Shores does not approve any kind of variance because there's no hardship to be able to explain that doesn't give an alternative. The Biscayne Park is the same.
Right, 100% of this project is elective, for example, right?
I'm sorry?
100% of this project is elective, for example, right?
I understand.
I mean, like, there's not an imminent danger or need to do additions and things like this. This is all.
Yeah, there's no hardship, but there's enough already with the existing structure, and many other jurisdictions see it this way. I know it's the word variance has a stigma.
Well, it's more the word setback is really, because we discuss variances frequently. Like I said, we've had so many garage conversion, right? So it's really the word setback that becomes the issue, because that is what protects that's one of the primary protections that El Portal has for property values at all, really. It is a lot of those setback regulations, because,
it's usually when it comes to side properties, because usually you don't want to be too close to your neighbor on either side. And it is a thing that, yes, thanks for the clarification, it is setback variances.
And I was going to ask, I mean, it's your property, so it's your right to do it, but I was just curious if the additional height of the addition took into, if there was any consideration given to what happens to, say, a neighbor's view or things like that, shading, all of these issues. Camila might be able to tell me if they saw any concerns that way of any obstruction to neighbors with additional height here. I don't see it in the plans. It looks, I mean, it really does, the plans are beautiful. I mean, so that's not the issue at all. And it does look like, even with the additional height, it doesn't really, like I said, it's not monolithic. It's,
But there's no additional height, we're 2 stories. It's not like we're building a condo where there's shadow being created. It's 2-story, we're within the height restriction.
okay, very good.
But what I was gonna say about the setback, and in situations like this, other jurisdictions, when they have a non-compliant condition like this one, they don't even, in many cases, they don't even call it a variance. They call it a continuing of a non-compliant. And when it's something like this, like I said, I don't go for setback variances ever, because there's no way to get it approved, because there's really no hardship. But when it's a non-compliant like this one I felt like the whole house is already there. You can't make the owner move the house, right? So that is already an existing condition. To extend it by 2 bays.
Excuse me, because that was my question. Even though we add in over 50% of existing, so it's considered no construction. That's why we're discussing this here. So even if you doing a whole new house, you add in double the amount of square footage that is existing now, you don't really have to, you have to comply with the new code. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I apologize, I didn't
Right.
answer your question before, but even if it was, with every new site improvement, no matter how small, we try to get closer in compliance to the code,
Right.
which is why our recommendation is as it is, to comply with the setback.
And it's understandable because setbacks are very important. But then again, as I was saying, many jurisdictions see this as a non-compliant, even though, of course, everything in this house is going to be up to code.
Right.
Because I can't get a building permit, I can't do anything if it's not up to code. The only issue is that this house is already existing encroached, and what we were expanding, we didn't do the addition of the habitable spaces to the north, which would have been a completely different volume. Those are to the east. So this is a continuation of an existing use, which is parking, which is 10 feet from the
Right.
property line. The moment we put 2 garages 5 feet back,
No, I understand. I walk by the property every single day. And as a matter of fact, it has an existing, almost like a 40 feet driveway in width, 30-something, with a 12 feet approach. And
which would change. 'cause we
which it will change because now you have, now, would it be any changes or any other consideration of like having the 2 car garages like next to each other and then the other room being, because of the situation that you're saying that, like to actually continue the design and stuff like that, it will make more sense to have the 2 garages next to each other, right? And then the next room, or whatever, the cabana or the bathroom, being at the 5 feet addition, setback, extra 5 feet setback. And so that wouldn't make the whole side of the house,
Yeah,
approaching the setback.
right, and so.
It'll be only an extra 10 feet, 10 foot or what, 15 instead of 27.
Right, so again, one of our biggest challenges is
Right.
because of the way El Portal exists right now. So we're in the process of updating ordinances, comp plan, architecture, book, right? All of these things. And a lot of this comes out of drama and headaches that have happened in the past from having a difficult time being able to apply our own code uniformly because of the great disparity of, houses built in the 30s, houses built in the 70s, houses built in the 50s. And then the fact that a lot of this is on us as a village because, the code had not been updated since like 1984, something like this. And so, so that is our focus right now, is to get us to a place where the village can apply the code uniformly going forward, because there are frequently the discussions of, well, you accommodated that resident, why can't you accommodate me? And so that will continue. And so if my concern is that if we don't get this right on this one, it's going to create potentially a lot of headaches for a lot of future administrations, and a lot of residents in the future too, because people might operate on the assumption that they will, the president is there, we should be fine, and then they're going to be told no, and that's going to, and so again, we have a lot at stake here in El Portal, and we have a lot to protect, because right now, specifically right now, there are just a lot of entities looking to completely change absolutely everything about single-family resident neighborhoods. And so we're small, we're poor, and so we are a target. And so we must think critically about absolutely every single one of these details that comes across in front of us. That's, certainly don't take it personally. And who's to say? We might end up agreeing with you and giving you the variance. We just can't say that right now at this time. And so it is I said it, I'll say that and then be done, but it is just a little bit concerning that there was not any type of a plan B in the event that that variance would not be granted. Yeah.
Okay, I see it more like a case-by-case basis. I don't see it like, because once you approve a variance for a certain applicant, then everybody else is gonna come and, we're doing exactly what we're doing here, starting and, seeing what's the possible way of, but yeah, many points, you're right. You have a lot of investors just coming by and, doing whatever they think is more appropriate, and maximizing the square footage on the properties, and forgetting about the green space. But that's why we have to serve you here. And if they really think there's nothing with the addition of this of what is being presented here, then it still falls into the percentage ratio building to green space. We're still good, right? Yes. Yeah, okay, perfect.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Right. Yeah.
So I do want to hear from the homeowner also, but so we're at the point right now, I think you guys, where we got to make a choice, right? So so choice number one would be, which I don't think anybody's for, it's just laying out the choices. So choice number one would be to take everything that they want, not even considering the conditions. That's choice number one. Choice number two would be to take the project, considering the conditions, with the conditions, right, to pass it with the conditions, but then, let's say, passing it with the conditions, giving them the variance. That's choice number two. Then we have passing it with the conditions without giving them the variance. That's choice number three. We also have, you guys, choice number four, which would be we're not comfortable with this. We would like to see another option. And we tell them more or less what we would like to see. We have them go and do that and come back to us. Now that would be the next committee meeting, which would be March. For planning and zoning. We're bi-monthly.
Mr. Chair?
Because remember, this is a special, yes, Mr. Attorney.
For procedural purposes, the council is actually already in discussion,
So what you may want to do for procedural purposes is allow the applicant to conclude their presentation and then open it up and see if there is anyone from the public who would like to comment. And then it comes back to the council, at which point somebody should make a motion and a second, and then you're properly in discussion as to what you want to do. But at the moment, I don't think that I haven't heard that the applicant has concluded, and you still have to have, I recommend having a public hearing. It's mandatory at the full council, but you might as well have it here. That may cut your time down. So if you do those couple things, then you're back to discussion, and the council can choose between the options as the mayor has laid them out.
Yeah, so I wanted to thank you very much, Mr. Attorney. So I'm laying them out so they start to think about what they want to do. Because I did say I still want to hear from the applicant, which means that would be the public, and they're still up here. But I'm at the point where I think that we're about to end this part.
Yeah.
I want them to start to think about what they want to do now that they know the options. I'm going to hear from the applicant. We're going to check this. We're going to bring up the app. Mr. Chair, you'll bring up the applicant, and then we can go from there, kind of decide, and from a decision we can kind of guide what we want with them. So.
Okay.
Well, I can close with, after hearing some of the comments and some of the things that have been said, this is an owner of a property who's going to live in the property. The way we've designed this addition to me, it's obvious that they're going to be moving in, but no developer would have gone through the amount of work that we did for this addition. If you can see the front elevation, there's elements that we're repeating. Most developers won't take so much of that into consideration. So it is going to be, a family is going to live there. Their baby has been born now a couple months ago. I believe that they're going to have a couple more kids because there's bedroom space for that. So they have a pool. We've worked very hard on terraces. These are live-in purchasers. This is not going to be a flip. Then going back to that elevation on the side, again, I want to make sure that we will see the same thing. I understand the whole issue with setbacks, but also the house, it starts here and it ends here, and there's garage on that side. It's much more than half of the facade facing that side. As an architect, I've been practicing 28 years. I've lived in Miami Shores for 14 years. I understand setbacks and variances for setbacks, but I feel strongly that this is the best option for this house. And again, just like you said, case by case, there's enough circumstances here that lend itself to add 2 more bays to 67 feet, adding about 20 feet to that. I didn't find it to be a detriment to the community or to the village. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Go ahead. Yes.
The only thing that I would say, Mr. Chair, as far as case by case, I understand, the sentiment with that. The only thing that I would say, recently, we were having a discussion about the permit fees. And I was speaking with the village manager. We were in a meeting, and we were talking about the permit fees with the development that's happening right now. And when we were in there, and Mr. Attorney, you were also on that conference call, and I said, and they'll tell you, I said, you guys, I want to get to a point to where we decide exactly what's going to be there, exactly the percentage, what's going to be written down, so that anybody that comes anytime after that, they don't have to ask us,
Right.
and get special approval, because it's there. You can read it yourself. So I understand what you're saying about case by case basis, but I think Vice Mayor Urbom said, no, we're trying to set up a system to where before they even get in front of us, they should know what our answer is going to be, because it's there in writing. And I think that's the point we're trying to get to.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Thank you very much,
Clearly.
Mr.
Now that, yes. Okay, so any more questions? Any more comments?
If the presenter is done,
Are you? Yeah.
and there are no further questions from the council or staff of the presenter, then it's appropriate for you to move to the public
hearing.
And that's exactly what, thank you, Mr. Keller. And we'll thank you, Victor.
Thank you.
And let's open it to the public. Any public comments, or you can come up to the, yes? And just please say your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Gustavo Gonzalez. I'm the owner of the house. And first, I would like to thank all of you for making this happen. I know you guys went ahead of schedule just for us. Yeah, just to touch a few points. This is going to be our main home. This is going to be our first home. We just started a family, and you know, we picked Victor especially for this project just because the way he builds everything. He takes into account the old architecture of the home. We didn't want to take anything away from it. We wanted to add to it and improve the neighborhood, the house, and make a little more space for our growing family. No, he did tell us about the setbacks. We looked at what we can do. We didn't really see any other way of building another car garage 5 feet back and for it to make sense. That's why we went with this design where the middle section is a little more pushed back than the other side to do a little bit of a break. I mean, the 3-car garage, the 3 parking spaces, it was something that we kind of wanted, you know, for visitors, things like that. But I know we have to give and take a little bit some things. So removing the 3rd driveway was, you know, was something that we really didn't mind to compromise. The compound feature of the house, how you were saying that the doors makes it a little bit enclosed. I think that's what the main architecture of this house goes for. It's the Spanish, old Spanish architecture. So we build those arches, those doors to make it fit that kind of theme. Yeah, I mean, I would like to ask you guys if you've really taken consideration the setback, because I really don't know what else we can do for this house to keep the look and feel that we're looking for, and that the look and feel that house deserves.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
Camilla, in your expertise, with what you guys, because you guys see so many different properties and homes and things like that, from his last comment that he just said, where they feel like there's no way that they would be able to get what they want without adjusting the setback. In your view, have you seen other single-family homes that have this type of situation where the conflict between trying to have the straight line, opposed to the setback situation?
I can't think of another example like this, but usually we try to find actually a break in the facade. So you were able to accomplish that with the primary frontage, in which the addition is actually set back.
Exactly.
And so
Right.
the main facade is, it stands out. The original architecture still has the main view. We even recommended to include more landscape in front of the addition, not that it's not beautiful in itself, but to give more prominence to the main building. And so that is why our recommendation remains for the secondary frontage. It remains consistent with the one for the frontage as well.
Yeah, Mr. Bruce, can you come back to the mic, please? Do you understand the point that she's trying to make?
I do, but it doesn't, it's 2 different conditions. It's 2 different strategies. The front is on purpose, not to take away from a beautiful volume that this house has. That's why you have the picture in the office.
So if we're here saying that we follow the lead of Preservia, right? And we're saying that for us to pass this, there must be an adjustment. Can you see any possible adjustment for us to get to the point to where we feel comfortable to pass this, or is it just a dead-end issue?
But if I may, I'll show you what I mean by two different conditions. At the front of the house, this volume right here is what makes the house such a beautiful home. This is your first story, and these dormers are the second floor to the house. Right here, you see the dormer here, and this is windows of the bedrooms on the second floor. There's a bedroom on the east and the west. So the intent was to maintain this volume, and this was pushed back as much as I could, so that when you drive on 87th, you can see this corner, you can see the gable end on this side, and you'll see it just like in the rendering from this side. You see the house. So this distance, although the setback is not dictating it, we made that voluntarily. But then when you come back to this side, which is the elevation that has the garage doors, this is of less importance than this volume. This is accessory, this is supplement to the house. And this right here, this is all existing. Where my arrow is going, this is all existing. This is only supplementing a small volume that's not the big house, and it's just expanding it a little bit. It's two different strategies. One is on purpose to not take away from the house, and the other one is just taking the supplemental accessory structures and continuing it, because the moment I change this roof line and this gable, it's gonna look like a third house. Right now, this is the most important. Then there's the addition, and then there's these three guys that are smaller, less impactful. The moment I break this, it's gonna look like a loose end. It just, I can't say it any other way, it's gonna look ugly.
So this is where we're at, right? So this is the impasse. From what he just said, because this is a committee, and we're the only ones on the committee, so this would have to be passed anonymously.
Unanimous.
All right? That being the case, if, whatever I think, if Vice Mayor Urban or Councilperson, or Chairperson Perella, if you don't get all of us to agree to a certain thing, then this is gonna be dead in the water, like. So I'm trying to find a way to find a compromise position to where we can stick to our guns as far as what we've worked so hard on and hired Preservia to do, and so we can stick to that, but that you guys can still do something that you guys would be able to live with. Because I want, you know, I want, you know, you guys to succeed, but I want us to also stick to what, as a village, we're working so hard to stick to. So what I would say is right now, you know, these type of decisions, it's not going to be made right here, right now. I think it's, you know, I would just say, unfortunately, and this is just me saying this, you know, he's a chairperson, he'll make the final decision as far as what we're going to do with this. But I would just say that we stop it here, we communicate, and we see if we could find a way to.
May I go with?
Yes, sure.
I've got just a couple more questions here whenever. I've got a couple more questions whenever.
Okay.
Are your questions intended to the owner who is public speaker, or to the architect? Because you should, at some point, we should let the public hearing close, and then, you know, again, whoever.
I can make mine in discussion, yeah.
You can ask anybody.
I can wait till discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're still in the public,
Right now, you're having a public hearing.
public hearing, yeah.
So, gentlemen, I don't know if anybody else wants to be heard, if anybody registered with the Zoom to be heard with questions, if there's There is another member of the public, I don't know if that person has questions. So I'm just saying, close the public hearing. If there's anybody else who wants to be heard, hear from anybody else who wants to be heard. And at that point, when you're done with the public hearing, it's the province of the council. So if the vice mayor has questions, you can ask questions to anybody who wants them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what we may have to do is that, because, you know, Mr. Bruce was sworn in, right? But now we're in public hearing, you know, Mr. Bruce is still part of the public, but we may have questions. I think what the problem might be is that even though we're in public hearing, we may have questions for the owner also, along with Mr. Bruce. So what we could do is close the public hearing, but if we close the public hearing, would then the owner have to be sworn in, like Mr. Bruce and?
I think the owner was sworn in.
You did.
No, he was not. That's what I'm saying. That's why.
We swear in there, we just swear in.
That's why I brought that up.
In order to testify at all, sir, you also need to take the oath. Are you prepared to do that if you're providing testimony? And if you're going to sit there and not talk, that's fine. But I didn't see that your hand didn't go up. So are you willing to take the oath? Or?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so just please raise your right hand and say aye and state your name.
I, Gustavo Gonzalez,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that the testimony I may give tonight
that the testimony I give tonight
will be the truth,
will be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
nothing but the truth.
The lady needs to cover
You can
her
say,
nose.
"So help me God," or you can
That
affirm.
lady in the public, she needs to cover her nose.
All right, so I think we're at the point, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Just procedurally,
So-
if this gentleman has anything else to say as part of the public hearing,
Yeah.
he can go ahead and do that. You should then see if there are any other persons who wish
Persons
to
on scene,
offer
right.
testimony. Then you can close the public hearing. At that point, it comes back to the council.
council,
And
yeah.
for instance, the vice mayor has some questions that can be asked of anybody. He chooses the same for the questions the mayor is asking or you. Anybody can ask whatever they want to, but at least you will have completed those other steps towards getting us done, possibly at some point tonight.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Gertler. So now that you're sworn in, come back to the podium, or you have something to say, Mr. Bruce?
Well, if there's the opportunity for more discussion and for example, if you were to ask me, like, the mayor was suggesting if there's any option that I would investigate to then conform to the setback, I'll give you an option that I would think of.
Give me 1 second, Mr. Bruce, give me 1 second. Mr. Chair, so what you want to do, we're still in public hearing, right? So what you want to do, you want to ask if there's anybody else, if there's anybody else that has anything to say in the public, for the public, right, for the public hearing. And if you have, they don't have to sit down yet. If there's nobody else that has anything they want to say for the public hearing, you can close the public hearing, they can stay right there, and then we can continue right where we left off.
Correct.
Okay, good, thank you.
So it's-
So if there's anybody else from the public that wants to come and have any comments or questions for the applicant or for any of us? Close public hearing and back to the council and to the applicants.
So, picking up again, you have suggested what could be an alternative that I could provide? Let's say,
To the microphone.
so let's say I'm starting anew. I would most likely suggest to tear down the existing garage and the connection, because it's just going to be a way to make this addition make sense. And that will be taking existing characteristics of the house. So going back to the rendering, if I were to do this addition and respect the 5 feet, it most likely means that we would want to demolish this, because it won't make any sense. It'll be a clear change if I do it at the house. I demolish this walkway, which is existing, and this existing garage, demolish everything and push everything over, then it makes sense as a wing of the house. But that it was never taken into account because it's the existing house, it's part of the house. So that would be an option, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. That's why I never proposed it. Another idea would be to do something different, maybe make a big gable here, but then it competes with this house.
Right.
So this one is compatible with the existing. So that's another option that I don't think would have worked. A flat roof would never have worked. So any kind of flat volume back here that's pushed back would look like a modern addition to an existing Spanish style. So there's a lot of things that go into the process of design. And unfortunately, and this is one thing I learned in school, what architects do and designers and interior designers, and you know, we look for beauty, and beauty is not 1 + 1 = 2. In some cases, there's these exceptions. And this is the only setback variance that I've ever applied for. And I feel like I just don't know what other options I could give the client to make this work.
No, like I said, the design is beautiful, and congratulations, this is a beautiful design, but taking into consideration what has been, what Pluservia, had to say, and respecting the setback and all of that, that's where we are right now with this project. Like I said, I don't know if there's any suggestions that I made, that we could make to make this work, and if the council, will feel more comfortable instead of doing the whole, I don't know, Camila, if you think that's, if instead of having the whole new addition, approaching those 5 feet, having just one structure, and the remaining being set back at 5, so it doesn't feel like Mr. Orban was saying, like a compound and all like fence or like concrete structure, which I see, those beautiful doors, and I see the gates, and it looks just amazing. But again, so that will make everybody else a little bit more comfortable. I don't know if a design point of view will still look good. Like I was saying, maybe, either the middle, a structure being, at 5, the extra, meaning the extra 5 feet of setback, and just having the extra additional parking garage, at the same level as the existing one, or making the 2-car garage next to each other and the other structure set back the extra 5 feet and then instead of having, like I said, instead of having the whole new addition approach, at the same level, having at least that, only the garage situation, because it's true, less than 22 feet, you're not gonna park a car inside a garage, so you need it. And I'd much rather to see a car park in a driveway than having it, parked in the grass, because that's what ended up happening. Everybody parks in the, grass. And so that'll be, I think if you can, accomplish that, or kind of like go and, meet halfway to the design, so that'll, I don't know if, members of the council will consider that a little bit more than, having to then demolish the whole thing, and then, the whole garage and that entrance, and try to push it in more towards the property line. So
Just so you know, this right here, this dashed line,
that's where it's supposed to be, yeah.
so, and this is the 10 feet
Right.
over here. So that's how much the house is basically 5 feet, and it's the whole walkway and a fifth of the garage is.
No, and the house behind it actually has a 2-car garage, 2-story, and it's actually, it's on the same, it's at the same level, so it's not like it's.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that they're buying a house that's sitting like this.
No.
They didn't cause this situation. And it's something to contend with, and that's why we're having this discussion, because I think it's worth having this discussion, because again, it's not a developer, he's not flipping this. This addition does not have the look of plugging in square footage just for the sake of plugging it in. And I don't work in projects like that. Like, I don't like to be told how to design. And we knew about the setback, but it just made sense. Again, I've worked in Miami Beach, I've worked in other jurisdictions where they take this and they consider it. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense, but in a case like this, it just makes so much sense.
Right.
That the alternative, and it's just, it's words that are not, like beauty and ugly. They're words that are spoken more in a studio. But it is a tricky situation of adding the garages on this side. And if you ask us to change it, then we'll have to come back. And if we
Right,
have to come
so like
back-
Mr. Urban said, you never presented the owner with Plan B or C, just in case these wouldn't pass.
Well, honestly, I wouldn't want to give you an
Right.
out. Because the out would not look good.
Right.
So we're gonna have to work on something, but if we can't get an approval, we were just saying, we can't do this addition on the north side. We wouldn't want to hold the addition of the overall project if we can't do it the way the north side is. So I wouldn't, we would just give up on that and we will work on something else. Unfortunately, it's not gonna look as nice. So there is a sense of quality to the village, even though it's small properties, even though it's small homes, you want to maintain some type of continuity, and that was maintaining continuity of the local house. Albeit 5 feet, but still, the house is encroaching 5 feet already.
Right.
So,
Okay, Mr. Gurley, you have something
I
to
was just
say?
going to say, Mr. Chair, that you may want to now see the two questions that the vice mayor had, and
Right.
maybe that'll shed some further light on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Gurley. Okay, go ahead.
I'm patient, I know we were getting there. I think my first question is actually for Camila. In the recommendations, the reference to landscaping. Could you remind us which face are we talking about in terms of your recommendation for landscaping, and what type of landscaping specifically are you referring to?
That recommendation refers to the front
Okay.
facade in front of the addition, although I believe they already have some landscape. It was just an encouragement to further make the
Highlight
original, further highlight the original.
That primary mass, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And then for the owner and the architect, I don't want, first, I know that my language is strong in terms of a compound, but I'm searching for an exact word, right? I think my comment about gated community was probably closer to where I was trying to go with that in terms of invitation or not. Now, looking at a combination of the plans and then the artist rendering, I will tell you again that the design is beautiful, and the preservation of the original structure, the incorporation of that architecture is definitely going a long way towards making me think that the variance might be possible, right? So again, I can't tell you which way I'll go on that at this point in time. But I wanted to, just for clarity, for everyone's sake, what you are saying is that in all of the considerations given of what to do with the addition of the garage and that extension, you are convinced that to do anything more drastically than what you've done with that line, because in that middle garage and the artist rendering, you have it, you can see it here, it's a matter of inches, but it's there in the plans as well. That one little interruption, right? Anything more than that, you're saying, is going to make that entire section seem out of place, incongruent, and overall distract, essentially, from the rest of the design, correct? Yes, okay. And I don't disagree with you that might end up being the possibility. So I would say to the council that there is a possibility here that by, if we were to just outright decline the variance and say redesign it, that what ends up happening is that we end up with a property that does seem incongruent or out of place, or so I certainly take into consideration what the architect is saying, and I don't think that he's just making it up to get what he wants. I think that he's right that it seems clear and obvious that he's put a great deal of effort into this design, even agonized over it, it does seem, you know, that's obvious. So I don't doubt your concern that if we force you to redesign that it's going to end up looking far different than where you intended it, right? Even far different than where we intended it by making that decision to hold your feet to the fire on the variance, right? And so I wanted to ask the question about the landscaping because I do take into consideration what you're saying in terms of, look, where, you know, the overall extension of the variance violation is a matter of feet. It's a small percentage of the overall length of that face. If we redesign it, it's going to potentially destroy, right? I don't think that's too strong. I think your concern is that you're going to destroy the aesthetic that you're going for if we alter it significantly. And so I think my question is just to kind of like clarify the larger points here. So from our perspective, we have no choice but to debate this to the bitter end because of that reality of the setback issue, right? But having said that, in that debate, a highly reputable, experienced architect is stating very clearly that if we do not accommodate this design, they're either going to go back to the drawing board on that entire section, right? Or they're going to end up with a piece that completely, nobody gets what they want at that point, right? Like if he just redesigns that one section to please us, then we very well could end up with a property that does not look congruent or consistent, right? Let alone aesthetically pleasing. So I just want to tell you that your points are very well taken. I've got a couple friends who are architects, and I'm fascinated by architects. In another life, maybe I'll have the attention span to become an architect, but that's not how it's going for me this time around. So, but I really do appreciate your concern of what could happen if we get what we want in terms of, you know, an alteration on that. That we could end up shooting ourselves in the foot and end up with a property that just doesn't look right, you know. And so then the question becomes, going back, I really appreciate your honesty when you said I didn't want to give you an out, you know, on a plan B or plan C. I mean, I really do appreciate your honesty in that. But it is going to come down to how strongly we feel that we would need to see a plan B to make a decision on whether or not we're going to accommodate a variance. And so that's going to be the tricky part. I will say that for me personally, the effort that you have gone through to get to this point, and the consideration that you took into the existing architecture, and everything you put into it, he makes me feel like we should strongly consider meeting you halfway here. Certainly at a minimum as a consideration. So I'm sorry that I can't give any more clarity on really where I'm going to land on this, but I do want to try and be clear that what we're talking about here is a very real possibility that if we refuse to consider that variance, that we could end up getting something that we did not intend in terms of a design. So it's a very real consideration to take into account. So I don't know if I helped anybody with these questions, but there you go.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Mr. Geller, I'm sorry, Mayor,
Yes.
Mayor Nickerson.
If I could try to just assist the point that the Vice Mayor is making. He asked about the landscaping. So if I understand correctly from what I heard before, is it correct that you accept on the record
the additional condition of adding landscaping to the site plan approval.
It was
Please
the
say for the
plan.
record, into the mic.
Yes, we agree, and when you see the site plan, we have every intention of adding landscaping to a beautifully, there's like 5 oaks which are on El Portal property. They were gonna add to that. So they had every intention, it's one of the things that they spoke to me about from the beginning, so yes, and landscaping is part of the, yes.
I get that, and I appreciate your answer, but the question is, do you accept that condition on the record?
Yes, we accept that condition on the record.
And
Yes.
just also to be clear, do you accept on the record the condition that the 3rd driveway be deleted?
Yes, we accept on the record that the 3rd driveway be deleted.
And other than the setback, the other conditions, which were just, kind of standard conditions, you accept on the record, construct in accordance with the plans and the other standard conditions, those are accepted on the record?
Yes, as a registered architect in the state of Florida, yes, I accept those conditions in the record.
So I would suggest to you, Mr. Chair, at this point, one of you should make a motion to grant or to deny the 5-foot
Various.
setback variance that they're asking for. And once the motion is made and seconded, you can continue to discuss and debate it. And I'll get there in 1 second, but it would seem that to try to move you towards a resolution, somebody needs to bite the bullet and say whether or not, make a motion and get a second to grant or deny. You can't do both. So it's one or the other, and somebody needs to lay that out there. If it passes, then you can adopt the proposal as it's in front of you with that one variance and the other conditions accepted on the record. If the motion to grant fails, or if a motion to deny passes, then perhaps at that point they'll need to withdraw for the moment and reconsider other options. But sir, you have a question?
Yes,
Might be simple.
if there's any way of avoiding getting to a point where if they do not approve the variance where the project is stopped, we'd rather not do that.
Well, the answer would be, they need to decide, there needs to be a motion and a second. The motion and the second does not end debate, if there is further debate, but there needs to be a motion, a second, and then a vote, depending on what they vote. If they go your way, and you got a pretty good recommendation there out of the vice mayor, but that's not a vote. If they go your way, then you're good, and if they don't, then you need to consider your remaining options as to what you're gonna do. But at least that will tee the issue up. The only other thing before I suggest that you see if you have someone willing to make a motion, let me just say, because when someone uses the word precedent, it may imply that they're using it in a legal sense. So let me just say, just my own opinion, which is all that any lawyer has. We don't wear black robes, we're not judges, we don't make decisions. If you grant something like this, you may feel that you've set a precedent and that you're going to vote in accordance with that in the future. And you're perfectly permitted to feel that way if that's your choice. But legally speaking, if you were to grant this variance based on the testimony tonight, which is from a licensed architect and has to do with questions of aesthetics, what is or is not beautiful, what is or is not appealing, and if that is a basis for your decision, no one really has the right to come before you
subsequently and demand that you are legally required to vote in a similar fashion because no two circumstances are identical. And even if it's the exact same setback, but the structure is different, and it strikes you as being less appropriate because this is a matter of discretion. Like I said, you may feel that you want to be consistent and, well, I voted for one, I have to vote for another. That's your choice. But I don't think that someone can successfully come in front of you and say you are legally obligated to vote for some future variance simply because you vote for this one, because the circumstances of each decision is, I think it was you that said that, or it was you that said that, Chairman. You're correct that the circumstances of each one are different.
Different, yeah.
So it is not a legal binding precedent on you, at least in my opinion.
Thank you for clarifying that, because that's what it refers to when they said in a case-by-case cases. Yes, thank you, Mr. Gardner. Back to the council. Mr. Mayor, you had something to say? You had a...
I mean, from what Attorney Geller said, remember you guys, before I laid out your 4 options, that was one of the options. So
Right.
those are the options. So we just need to make a decision because I think we've heard everything that they're going to say. I think that we all know how we feel up here. So we just need to pick one of those 4 options and make a decision.
No, excuse me, I do have a question. The paving on the property, is that over asphalt or is it on
Well, the plan is to put pavers on sand.
sand?
Yeah, so
Okay.
they're pervious and, you know.
Okay, pervious, okay, it makes a huge difference. Okay, thank you. Well, do I,
All right, let's,
what's the decision here?
You would need to ask for a motion for, one of those 4 options, and go from there. Or you have the option to where if you don't agree with any of it, then you can, then there could be no motion made, and we just, we're at a standstill, and it stops right here. And that's
Right.
it.
Well, I like I said, I reviewed the plans since Mr. Gonzalez sent us the emails, and I saw the everything, and like I said, I passed by the property like almost every day, and I said it again, the plans are amazing, and again, it's based on the situation and how the house is actually situated, and being like their parking situation is not, they're actually willing to take one. They're going more for the setback than, the driveway. So I know you're still looking at the 3 driveway situation right there on the drawings and all of that. But I think taking that out, and even though again, the house behind it has a double car garage, 2-story, that is on the same property, and it follows that same line. To me, even though, Proservia, they're just doing their work, their job, and they're letting us know that the property is, but the whole property, like we've seen here, is already approaching the setback, or the new setback. So,
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding in consulting with the manager, since I haven't been that long, is that for these committee meetings at least, because you frequently only got 3 members, that any member of the committee, including the committee chair, is allowed to make a motion without passing the gavel. That's my understanding of what you've been doing. If that's not correct, please tell me, but I just want to make that point. Any of you can make a motion, I believe, including you.
okay, thank you.
I will- I will take a stab at it, though. All right, all right, so I will say that in light of the overall design, in light of the owner's willingness to agree to lose one of the garages, at least one of the driveways, right? as well as, again, the overall design with the lot coverage that we're talking about, and the other facing sides outside of the one with the issue of the setback, then I will say the following. I will make a motion to approve this application to go forward to the general council with the understanding that there is an agreement to eliminate one of the driveways, and with an agreement for all of the other conditions, and granting the one, right, and granting the variance to the one condition of the setback, again, in light of all the efforts that they have made to meet us halfway. I don't know if that needs to be part of the motion, but if I need to rephrase, all right, then that is my motion.
Okay, there's a motion made by Vice Mayor Nickerson, Vice Mayor Urban, to approve the application with the condition of removing the driveway and all the conditions that the applicant had. And granting that one variance, the setback. Okay, there's a motion.
So just for clarification, so we're basically accepting what Preservia wrote. We're accepting.
And making the decision that Preservia said.
Yeah,
we would
because
have to make.
number 2 is the variance, so we're basically accepting what
Yes.
Preservia said.
Yes.
Okay.
So, do I get a second? I'll second that motion.
You need to ask Madam Clerk for a roll call. And this is to move it to, for clarification purposes, this is to move it to the full council meeting, December full council meeting, you guys?
It's a recommendation to move it, a recommendation of approval that moves it along. You can recommend denial and it still goes to the full council. This is a recommendation of approval as stated.
As stated on there.
Everything that the vice mayor said.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the motion made by Vice Mayor Urban, second by Councilperson Perrella. Madam Clerk, do I get a roll call?
Vice Chair Erdogan,
Yes.
Mayor Nickerson,
Yes.
Chairman Perrella,
Yes.
and then I pass this to Representative
Let me say this. You guys are maybe the last of the Mohicans. let me just put it that way, because Vice Mayor, we're not.
I put it
going in the future. In the future, we're sticking to what was written down in black and white, and so.
And as
Congratulations on your young child that did go into making my decision, and we've been going back and forth, and the communication's been great, and that's why. So that's the reason why I gave you the yes. But you guys are definitely the last of the Mohicans, because going forward we're not going to be any variances. So.
Perfect.
So what you guys will want to do, Mr. Chair, if I may. So next week, so we're moving to the full council. So next Tuesday. Just like tonight, but next Tuesday is a full council meeting, starting at 7 p.m. And that's where we'll be passing it at the full council, and that's like the last, as far as the council or committee goes, that's the last, hump you'll have to go over with that. All right. So next Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Will be the full council meeting. Okay.
And
You guys won't have to do the whole presentation and stuff in this much detail, but you guys need to come prepared with your materials, okay? All right.
Perfect, thank you and congratulations again.
Yeah, because there very well could be more public discussion at the general council. So, yes, but yeah, for me it came down to the design and well done, and I'm sure Mr. Gonzalez will consider a bottle of champagne for you.
Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. So now, we have a good and welfare, right? If anybody needs, has any comments, or is it open to the public? Anybody can come and say anything they want to?
Hearing none.
Hearing none.
Mayor, I'm sorry, or Chairman, the Plus Urbia rep, gentlemen, before you go, the Plus Urbia representative correctly points out that we probably do not have enough time for advertising.
Advertising, yes.
Meeting next week.
Next
So
week.
we'll have to go to some subsequent meeting. It can't be done as soon as
Advertising.
next week, just because we have to advertise it. So, again, as the mayor pointed out, there's no guarantee that, the public will say or do, but regardless, it can't be, thank you for pointing that out.
But what is the timeline required for that specific?
10 days.
How many?
No, it's a 10, but you couldn't get it in. 10
Okay,
hours.
but it is 10 days on this activity, okay,
It's a 10 days, but you couldn't get it.
okay.
So it'll be, but on the other hand, if you didn't have this special meeting tonight, you'd be talking at least February before you could have gotten it approved.
Yeah.
Under these circumstances, it could probably be approved in January at the regular meeting, unless it turns out to be, for some reason, some special meeting that's held prior to the regular January meeting.
So basically, what you're looking at right now would be January 26th. Because our council meeting is always the fourth Tuesday of the month. So
Well,
January 26th would be...
almost always.
Almost always. That's usually how it goes. So January 26th would be that meeting where this item would come back up for the full council. And if you pass at that particular point, then you don't need to see our faces anymore.
And you'll be notified, sir.
I know that you guys were looking to do it sooner. Is that going to be a problem? You come to the microphone. Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I can
That's okay.
I appreciate it.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah, we wanted to get it done by this year, if it's possible. If there's anything we can do,
Can you wait till
like,
the
advertise it or-
first month of next year? Can you do that? We passed the various that we're never going to pass again for you. Can you wait till the first month of next year for us?
Okay,
It's
so-
a legal requirement.
yeah,
It wouldn't be valid if we did it next week.
yeah,
Yeah.
It would be subject to challenge.
okay,
You'll be starting off the new year with a kick.
yeah.
All right? We appreciate it, man. Thank you for your patience, all right?
No problem.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it. You guys take care.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Okay, once again, good and welfare. Anybody has anything to say?
Yes,
Yes.
I want to congratulate Councilperson Perella on chairing his first committee meeting. Great job.
Thank you. So, thank you for your help. Thanks, everybody. So,
Get a motion
Mayor, you
to
have
adjourn.
something to say?